So welcome. This is facilitating metadata creation in state and local government. So we've got a panel here, a group of presenters. Sarah Ray is the Spatial Data Manager at NC Department of Transportation. She's also the chair of our Metadata Committee. That's part of our coordination structure in North Carolina. We have a statewide mapping advisory committee. Then that has a subcommittee for metadata, and Sarah is chairing that. Also, I have Linda Wayne, who's also on the committee, but she's been a consultant on this project, GeoMaxim LLC. She's also has many years of expertise with Federal Geographic Data Committee as a metadata specialist, so we're happy and lucky to have her on our panel today as well. I'm Jeff Brown from the North Carolina Center for Geographic Information and Analysis. I'm staff to the committee and happy to contribute that way. Chelsea Duncan is home with the flu, unfortunately. She's from NCDOT GIS unit. She's a technical specialist on this topic. We'll miss her today. But I want to give her a shout out. She's done a lot in the preparation for this session. From North Carolina Central University, we are very fortunate to have Craig Peterson as our intern to NCDOT with direction to work on this project on metadata. This is a gift to all of us. Thank you, NC Central. And Dr. Tim Mulrooney, who is his advisor and helped make this happen between NC Central and NCDOT on behalf of all of you metadata specialists or becoming specialists. Okay, so I also want to say that we're going to use our application on our phones today, if you would please. So the way to do this, if you haven't done it yet, is to go to your NCGIS app, and on the upper left there's a button for schedule, and it comes automatically to today's schedule. You need to scroll down to find our session, and when you get there, you have to scroll down to the 10:30 slot. I think it's the first one at 10:30, 10 o'clock slot. So you find it there, and if you want to get ready, it looks like this. On the left is information about jumpstarting metadata creation with the NC metadata profile. And as you scroll down, you'll see information and pictures of some of us. But also, if you get way down to the bottom, there's a section called Live Polls, as you see on the right. And we have a number of live polls there, so get ready. Don't start taking them yet. We're going to pose the questions first before we get to your answers. Okay. So let's get started bringing up Craig Peterson, find out a little bit about you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So as Jeff said, my name is Craig. I just want to start with, if anybody has any questions during this, though we did build in sections in which, open to discussion. If there's anything you need clarified, we have a lot of technical experts here we can call upon, so feel free, just interrupt, throw something at me, just get my attention. So first we're going to use the app. We want to kind of just get people moving, get excited about metadata today, right? So a couple things we want to know. First, what is your name? We want to know who's brave enough to be here to dive into this world of metadata with us. And then also your organization, who are you representing, what layer of government perhaps is here. So we'll just take a minute. Once I see everybody kind of look up, and you may have already got there, we will move on. That was quick. Wow, all right. All right, so we got here. So pretty even split. So local, regional government, state level, federal. Oh, we're shifting. It must have been Linda. There we go. Okay, shifted. So local, state, education. No, I'm just gonna wait. So yes. Look at this power. Oh, this is pretty cool. Okay. Education. All right. Did you say that was you? Oh, that was you? Okay. Okay. Well, welcome and thank everybody for stopping in. So we're going to do an activity, and this is something that we like to do because it's fun and it gets people, again, excited. So we're going to talk about what is your relationship to metadata. So in the past, how would you have described yourself in creating metadata, right? And so get creative here. So we came up with some non-risque ways in which to to do this. First, are you new to metadata? Never done it before? Maybe you have a long time ago, but kind of gave up on it. So are you starting over, perhaps? Second, you dated briefly, but never went anywhere, right? So you tried, you gave up. Third, you are not really currently doing metadata, but you would like to get serious with it. Fourth, in an arranged marriage. It's my favorite. And then last, crazy in love. And I expect everybody in here is already crazy in love with metadata, so we probably skip this exercise. But so go ahead and enter that into your poll, and we will flip and wait. Give everybody a little bit of time.
Greg, I will say, before the session, I heard some folks over here said I can't get away from it.
Yes. Yes. I'll start. So with myself, I will definitely describe myself in an arranged marriage. So as a graduate student, metadata is paying my way, right? So I had a different term for this, so I'm trying to keep it a little more PC today. So definitely mutually beneficial. Is there anybody else that wants to be daring and describe yourself? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So for those that didn't hear, it was frequent blind dates and occasional one-night stands. That is very close to what I would have described, but there you go. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. That's fun. Oops. Okay, so who's promoting the profile and why? So really the purpose of creating and promoting the new North Carolina state local government metadata profile is really a way in which we can create greater consistencies and efficiencies within the creation and sharing of metadata throughout the state. So for the NCGICC, so for those of you not familiar, the North Carolina Geographic Information Coordinating Council, some of the goals established to do this include the facilitation of the metadata creation, the improvement of the quality of creating metadata, and of course the standardization and the integration of ISO standards, which really is the crux of all this, right? So it's creating that standard of which we can all follow and use. And then lastly is the preservation of these data investments and then the enhancement of the data and discovery. So this goes to kind of the interests of the different agencies. So the efficiencies, I think with efficiencies, time and cost, right? So who created this profile? So the creation of this profile is truly a collaborative effort. The vision of the profile is such that we hope that geospatial data, metadata creators across the spectrum of agencies can really benefit and use the profile in a really specific and concise way. So if we're going to create the profile, we really need to engage and collaborate with all the different stakeholders, right? Because ultimately you're the one benefiting or not benefiting from this. So this included, different layers of governments here, state, local, your federals. You have your university systems, private, and then your professional associations. So just on this, speaking panel alone, we have representatives, myself from education, Dr. Marooney, education. We have state level with Sarah and Jeff, and private over here with Linda. So you can kind of see that representation, the different stakeholders across the different sectors. So we're going to start talking about the actual standard itself. So I kind of want to specify initially, we're talking the North Carolina state local government standard. This is something that has been tailored to the needs of the agencies across the state. So, which standard does it use? Our standard doesn't follow line for line any one standard. It is mostly specific to the ISO. Because whenever we're going through the process of discovery and creation, talking with the other stakeholders, we find that the ISO really speaks to and it incorporates all the different elements in a very broad spectrum that most can benefit from. So a lot of the history, and we can start at the bottom here with the CSDGM, that's kind of where we came from to where we are now. So the adoption of the original ISO standard in 2003, so 19115, is now being transitioned to the 19115-1. It's important to note here that during this transition time, the content for the -1 has been approved. Yet it's not fully implemented. We're waiting for the XML schema to be fully developed and approved. That's going to dictate really, what's the word I'm looking for here? There we go. How the tools recognize the structure of the metadata. So why ISO? And I kind of briefly just touched on this in the previous slide, is that ISO really speaks to the broad range of the needs of the state, right? So it covers all, a multitude of different levels of data. So your data collections, features, services, data models, methods, symbol sets. It's also flexible and it's easy. It has fewer mandatories, which I'm sure makes absolutely everybody happy. More pick lists, and this goes to speaking to the efficiencies in creating one standard, right? So if we, create lists in which you have to choose from, there's, again, greater consistencies for everybody to use. It's modular and efficient. What's important here, or at least a piece of it, is the reusable snippets aspect. There's certain elements such as, points of contact, for instance, that we can essentially create centrally, a space which holds a lot of this kind of reusable data, and we can pull, some of these normally, often, filled out elements. We can pull from a central location and populate multiple metadata records, right? So you're not having to do things over and over and over. And then last is what we've kind of been talking about. It really creates this standardized profile that we're all going to be able to benefit from because we're using the same thing. Okay, so another activity, and Linda's going to help me here. We're not going to use the poll this time. We're going to use our little whiteboard. So what we're asking is, what do you expect basically to see in this standard, right? So the question, when you receive data from another organization, what key information do you need to know to apply that data effectively and accurately? What would be beneficial to you as a metadata user and or creator to know when getting and or receiving data? Yeah. Okay, so the source of the data. Okay. Accuracy dates. Okay. Just dates all around. Yeah, there's multiple. Okay. Yeah. Coordinate system. Good one. We'll wait 1 second before we watch it. Okay. Yeah. Field definitions. Okay. Can you guys hear me in the back? Okay. Yes. Okay, perfect.
I didn't hear that one.
Contact information.
Okay.
Purpose. Great. Okay. Purpose of data set. Okay. Anybody else? Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay. So the update schedule, right, the frequency. Yeah. Okay, the extent. Okay. Okay. Yes. The resolution, yeah. Okay. That gets us there. Good.
That's how I interpret it.
Okay, so the question was, is the projection the same as a coordinate system, what you're asking, right? So, okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
Did the person that saved this one mean something to you? You mean basically what's the coordinate system in which the data set is maintained, right? Including projection.
Anybody else? Okay. So this is when we're going to now start getting into the standard itself, right? So we're talking about, what do you expect to see? What would be helpful? So this is basically how it's built, right? So these are the different elements. At least these here are the mandatory elements that is based on the ISO standard that is underpinning the North Carolina state local government standard. So first, we're going to go down the list and see if we've kind of mostly captured everything. So source, where's it at on here? Oh yeah, that's in. Okay, so the lineage, and we'll see when we get to the next slide. So that is that is going to be the optional element. We have the date of the content. We don't have a little mouse. Temporals here. So on the second column, fourth down. So that's captured. Coordinate system, definitely. Somewhere. Why can't I see this? Yeah. There we go. Okay, spatial reference. Field definitions. That's really, no. That's, yeah. Wow, I really can't see this. Okay, feature catalog. Yeah, absolutely. How about?
Feature catalog is what we used to know as entities and attributes. So that's what that's referencing on your entities and attributes and labels.
Did everybody hear that without the microphone? Yeah, okay, cool. We got contacts. Yes. Custodian or POC. Third down. And there's multiple different contacts within this. Purpose. Yes. Frequency, theme.
Abstract is required.
Purpose is optional. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see that in the next. Okay. It's kind of, it gets mixed up. Okay, the frequency in which the metadata is updated, and that is on what, the seventh one down. So the maintenance update frequency, definitely. Geographic extent is what, a third one down, second row. So we definitely got that. And resolution, which we talked about. Yeah, I have that.
Okay, resolution is a little difficult because.
Oh yeah.
Resolution is a little difficult because GIS data does not have a scale until it's printed. So that means either your source can have a scale, which would be your lineage and discuss, or imagery would have resolution. And this standard is meant the minimum, these requirements must apply to all data resources. So resolution is specific to imagery, but if you had a GIS file, it wouldn't be relevant. But resolution is key if resolution is a factor of your data set, obviously. And don't think of optional elements as things that, oh, I don't really have to do. They're things that don't apply to every data set. How's that?
Okay, cool. And it is important to note also, so these required elements, these are elements basically which put you in kind of minimum compliance of the ISO, right? So there's definitely a lot more that are useful, some that may be required by your agency, some obviously that may not. But this is the minimum. So the next slide, and this is what kind of we were referring to. We have these optional elements, and this is a whole different set of lists. I think we had, what, 2 or 3 up here? All right. Okay. So this goes back to kind of what we were speaking about before. So whom is the profile intended? Really, it's everybody. And that was really the purpose of engaging all the different levels of governments, the private entities, the universities, because the expectation is to create this singular system which everybody can benefit. Which includes the international people. And that was, Jeff, did you have anything you wanted to? You had a thing, okay. So these organizations, during this process, they were engaged in communication and were interested in learning about what was happening locally. And you, right? So all the different organizations, you, makes your job easier, which then benefits your organization. At this point, are there any questions? Nice little cartoon. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, I guess, what is the differences between, I guess, identifying the metadata creation date, metadata contact, metadata point of contact? Right. Did you? Did you want to say something?
There's that, and then there's the distinction between you can have a contact for the metadata editing itself, which is different than could be different than the contact information for the data set itself. Correct.
Yeah. So the next section, we're actually going to get into looking at the profile. So I'm going to do a general introduction. A little bit later, we're really going to dive deep and look at more of the details. And we forgot to pass these out initially. So we're going to give everybody a copy of the actual North Carolina State Local Government metadata profile. If you don't have one, just raise your hand, please. We have some here. Do we need more? I have one. Okay. Does anybody still not have a copy? Yeah. Okay. There we go. So the document is broken into 5 different sections. So the very first part really goes into speaking about the the importance of metadata. It goes into talking about kind of the creation of this document. Next session, the standards used to develop the profile. So it's looking at the ISO and the CSDGM and saying, okay, what's important? what is useful for our users across the state. And this gets into the really important part, and this is kind of where the money is made. So we're starting to look at the implementation aspects, right? So the table and resources and the recommendations. This is really what's going to help guide the user in making metadata creation a whole lot easier. The tables, which are broken into your geospatial data and geospatial services. And then lastly, your appendices. And then we're going to get into kind of going through a couple of these in the next couple of slides. But these are really the ones that support the different elements and the data types that you're going to be using when creating a metadata element here. Okay, so first, if everybody would just turn to page 9 within their document. You should see this. So the main thing is to look at here. So this is the first table, right? So this is referring to the brown, I guess it's brown. It's the geospatial data. The last section will be the geospatial services. So the main things here at the top, you see two different in the legend, right? It's the blue and the orange. So when we were doing this little exercise, we talked about the required and we talked about the optional elements. And so these are categorized by such. So the first section are all of your required elements as defined by this standard. So each one, as you move through, are broken into 3 different sections, right? So it identifies the element. So what are we looking to fill out or provide information for? You have your data type. And this varies. So this varies depending on what is being asked. So you have, like free text. If it's a date, it basically will tell you, how to fulfill your date. So whatever you're needing, if you look to this data type, it's going to inform you as to what is being asked. And then finally, you have your best practice. So this is your guidance aspect. So for each section, it's basically going to hopefully very clearly define to you what we're looking to have. And the whole purpose of this is really, again, it goes back to the standardization. This hopefully will corral what is being entered, and this, will be useful when, metadata record is created and, someone else is out there searching, for your data set, right? And so we have the information in a, singular way. The search and discovery phase for others will be a whole lot simpler. We have other pieces. Okay, so the metadata element name, which is mandatory, type of values, and guidance. Okay, so now flip to page 14, please. So what we're going to show here is if you look at this very first piece, so under data type, you have the metadata scope code equals service. So anytime when you're looking at these data types, if you start seeing something that's hyperlinked, is underlined in your document, or it's in quotations, it's basically asking you for something specific, right? So it's not free text. You can't just stick something in there. So you really need to pay attention to this. This is basically signifying to you that there's a table or code list perhaps in the appendices that's going to give you further direction as to how to fill out this particular element. And so everything else remains the same. So you have your best practice, but this is really kind of just signifying to you that, hey, we need to look deeper into this document. Which, in this case, right, so it's the code list. If we have, I don't want to step on anybody's toes who's doing this in a little bit because they're going to get more into depth. So the code list, really the benefit of this is much like everything else, right? So we're creating the consistencies, we're improving the search and discovery phase for others because we have the consistent elements for every metadata record that's based on this ISO-based standard. So on page 17, getting to the first of the appendices and the first of the code list. So again, the top table, we have under data, we have this topic category code, which is underlined, right? So we're going to flip to the code list in the appendix, and we're going to look at your topic topic category code. And in this particular instance, you have options, right? So it's not telling you exactly which one you can choose, but this one's going to give you, all the available options that you have to pick from. In this particular instance, there's 15, 20 different, how many? 19. All right. That you get to choose from. So whichever one best describes your needs, that's what you're going to choose, right? Does everybody kind of get that? It's a couple pages long if you kind of flip through. Another example of a specific ask here is the scope codes, right? So again, on page, that's not the right page. Okay, so if you look at the scope code, in this particular instance, it highlights it as a service, right? So then you look over to the description aspect, and it's going to tell you basically, again, what it's asking for specifically. In this case, the description is the information applies to a capability which a service provider entity makes available to a service user, right? Pretty self-explanatory. It's really just a matter of being aware of, I guess, what is being asked and where to find it. And this is going to be in later exercises here. So for this North Carolina State Local Government profile, it's really underpinned by a bunch of different standards, right, as we kind of previously spoke, a lot of different information. So what really goes into this is supported by the ISO, the CSDGMs, the FGGCs, and I guess additional resources we have at the bottom as they're created. And so this is going to be when the adaptation of the -1, right, so the 19115-1 is created, that's going to be the, quote unquote additional resources. And then last for me, if you flip to, it's really the last pages of your appendix, we're talking about XPath. One cool thing about this particular standard is that it really kind of makes it a little more user-friendly. And by that, I mean a lot of the elements being asked. In this example, we see title. Title is used at multiple different levels within metadata record, right? So depending on what the subcategory is, perhaps, so it's identification, information, lineage, content, they all ask for a particular title. And that could be confusing for a lot. Which one are you referring to if someone says title? Well, I don't know. So what this standard does, if you look at the Appendix 3 with the element XPath, it really provides a breadcrumb trail of, how to move around. So if you're not sure and you don't want to go through your metadata editor and just clicking, you can look at your element XPaths and figure out how to get there, right? So if anybody's familiar with XL, this is probably second nature to you. For those of you like me that are not, this is very, very beneficial. And that's Linda. And now I'm going to pass you off on to Linda.
All right, we're going to do a little activity. Get your polls out. We're going to ask you to dig through these tables a little bit. We're actually going to dig through the whole standard to do a little activity. First of all, we're going to focus on the tables. And I'll give you a hint, they are in order as they appear in the table, so that hurts. So the first question is, going back to your table, which is an acceptable role code value for responsible party role? And you'll see down here where it'll tell you which poll you're responding to on the app. You see it, metadata roll call. Let me get the standard real fast. You guys understand what I'm asking you? And I'll give you a page number so that'll help. Okay, it's on page 10 of the standard. Go look and see what we're asking for. So do I go to the poll? All right. Somebody can enter on my phone if they want to. Give you a couple seconds here. All right, I think we have a clear winner. I'm sorry. supposed to talk in the microphone? Okay, I'm right there. Okay, so the point here is that following up what Craig made a moment ago, is sometimes it'll say just go pick a value out of this code list, and sometimes it's going to say we want this value. And in this case, it's saying when it comes to the role code, we're asking you to tell us the responsible party that is either the point of contact or the custodian for the data resource. That's who we're trying. That's what we want to see in that element. All right. Yay. All right. So when we talk about the geographic extent, there's a bounding box element. What is the coordinate format required to define your bounding box?
Choices.
Oh, yeah. See, that's confusing. Do you want me to go back? Oh, you'll see the choices here. Is everybody getting in on this or just watching? I'm not sure how long to leave for getting participation. All right. Again, a pretty specific winner here. The reason that your bounding box, now this is different than your projection of your data set. Your data set can be in any projection coordinate system that it needs to be. But when you express the bounding box, we ask that it needs to be done in geographic lat long, just because that's a universal system without any qualifiers, and it's not North Carolina State Plane. It's a universe, it doesn't have any, what's the word? Parameters associated, regional parameters associated with it. So you do have to put you do have to express it in geographic coordinate decimal degrees. And the key there is that most of your software systems that you're using to create your metadata should populate that for you automatically. Yay. All right. Are place keywords in this document, are place keywords required? And I'll give you a hint, page 13. Oh, go to the poll. This is my first time with this. Oh, we have a split for the two people that probably responded. Are place keywords required? All right, no, they are not. They are optional, but they are not required. And one point I want to make about these optional elements, the optional elements sort of they ensure compliance with the earlier standard, the CSDGM. The mandatory requirements are sort of based on the ISO, but if you want to be compliant with CSDGM, and you'll see this in the document itself, you'll need to do the optional elements as well. No. All right. Now, the way the table is organized, it's first done for data sets, and then the second part of the table is for services, because we're really encouraging you to start documenting your services, your data catalogs, your web mapping services, those kinds of things. So, which of the following elements are specific to the documentation of geospatial services? And I'll give you a hint. You're going to want to look at the services table that is on, thank you, 14. So, go to this thing. All right, look at 14. Do you see the top service-specific elements? All right. The scope, let's do this. I'll leave it up in case you. The scope is required, and the reason that scope is required is that in the ISO standard, when you document something, the default, it assumes it's a data set unless you say otherwise. So that's why metadata scope is required for services, but not a data set. All right. So going back to, we're now moving into the appendices. And we want to know for topic category, what topic category best applies to zoning maps? So flip over to your topic categories on, and someone's going to get the page 18. And you'll see the examples, and the examples are very helpful in using this list. So, planning and cadastre, boundaries, or location. And again, I believe the question was most applicable. All right, you guys got it. I want to make the point here too. Topic categories, you must include one. You may include multiples. So obviously, boundaries would be a very good option here, but it specifically calls out zoning maps as a planning cadastre field. And again, remember, this is an international standard, so sometimes the terminology and the words that are not exactly what we might have done. All right. All right, now we're going to go to those resource documents, the next part of the standard, which is page 23. And so the CSDGM, the older standard, a lot of people called it the FGDC standard. By the way, please don't do that anymore because now we're endorsing several standards at the FGDC, so there is no FGDC standard per se. So that's why you'll hear us using CSDGM a lot, which doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but we shouldn't have to do it too much longer. So how much does it cost to get the technical standard, the technical publication of the CSDGM? And the answer is actually on page 24. To the poll. It's free. That's right. The CSDGM was a federal standard. It was a federal publication, so it's completely free. Unfortunately, this is not the case with the ISO standard. It is a document you have to purchase, and we encourage organizations to purchase it through group, for the entire organization, regardless. But also, we're working on guidance documents, things like this kind of training, these kind of profiles, so that you don't have to physically buy the standard. It should be implemented in your metadata editor. All right, this is the complicated one. Talking about these XPaths. Like Craig said, there were multiple ways to get to certain things. So when we say online linkage, where is it that we want to see an online linkage? So you're going to want to go back. If you go to your XPaths on page 25, it's sort of the bottom of page 25, you're going to have to read a little bit to get what the... And again, this is a preferred, not a required. So you see that both the preferred approach is through the distribution section versus the contact information. And the point there is that we can add a lot more information about the service if you use distribution than we can through the contact. There is not as many supporting elements. Yay! Okay. So we talked a little bit. Feature catalog. Might have given this away earlier. And this is, on this back section, we included a section on feature catalog. Is it a website from which the data can be accessed? Is it the entities and associated attributes or the sources used? What is a feature catalog? All right, I think we've been pretty clear about that. And I encourage you to look at this description of feature catalog because it's going to help you make that transition from the CSDGM to the ISO. And I think it's the dataset entities and attributes. So, any questions about using the document? We'll have more discussion later, but we're really looking for your input if you were in any of the earlier sessions on usability. We tried to keep this as simple and straightforward and useful as possible. So be thinking about that as we continue with the discussion on how this resource could be improved. It is available online, you know that. So again, is this working for you, the combination of tables and appendices and code lists, et cetera, et cetera?
If I'm creating a big file and wanting to publish it, and I'm in ArcGIS, I want to create a metadata. Am I looking at the ISO standard or am I looking at the CSDGM?
I'm going to let, here's my, the ARC catalog is an Esri implementation of metadata. It doesn't write to, it includes both standards. It doesn't write to a standard until you publish it or export it. You can choose to export it as ISO or you can choose to export it as CSDGM. Now, as a result, the ARC catalog doesn't give you a lot of guidance on the mandatory elements because it's not standard specific. That's why this resource is so useful and that you know what's required. This, if you follow the required elements in this profile, you'll be ISO compliant. If you follow the required and the optional elements, you'll be CSDGM compliant. If you do the required elements, you'll be ISO compliant.
North Carolina has adopted and approved
This
profile of. I'm sorry. I'm up next anyway. I'll pop up. So what we've done in North Carolina is taken the time to look at the international standard and those that are then adopted and approved federally, and our state GICC has adopted those standards. So actually the next piece that we're getting into, and some stuff you'll hear about later, are to then take those standards and to make them more North Carolina specific. So in using ARC Catalog, we're also, and not only ARC Catalog, but all sorts of metadata editors. We'll be making how-to documents and rolling out some training, and we'll be talking about that later as well. So you actually be getting documents with screenshots and how to walk through your metadata editors, in a lot of cases, to use the North Carolina profile of the ISO standard. So basically, when you're in ARC Catalog, to answer your question, there's a bunch of different metadata choices for your template to be used. You set your choice. We recommend the ISO actually 1939 that's in the ARC catalog that we have right now, and that will get you access to all of these elements to edit them. If you just are using ArcMap and ARC catalog and just have it at the featured data set, the default way that ARC catalog has metadata to document, you won't even see these elements to edit. So you have to set that template up in how you set up your ARC catalog to even get to the elements, and then you'll be able to walk right through them. In ARC catalog, there's 4 or 5. He asked, what do you set the template to? In ARC catalog, I believe there's about 5 different template options. My recommendation is the ISO 1939. I have to close my eyes. It is because right now ARC catalog isn't fully -1 compliant. It's a lot of words, but basically to give you a fighting chance at getting to the elements to edit, that would be my recommended implementation. And on our website, we do have an ARC catalog how-to, and it's actually documented in there. Because, like Linda was saying, the way that the Esri editor works, it actually stores it internally in an Esri metadata format, and your compliance with any standard is upon publishing, upon export. So you have all of these options from which to export it to meet a certain standard. That sound right? It sounded really good when I said it, and I thought maybe it's too. So kind of to go on to the next section, what I was talking about is, so it's kind of the profile that you guys have been interacting with, that document is fabulous. And one of the things I find fabulous about it is how we've taken it and really worked with those agencies that Craig talked about to begin with to come up with examples from North Carolina on how to fill out these things. So I'm going to walk you through some of the content of the North Carolina profile of this standard. We're going to look at guidance, best practice. So Craig showed you how the tables are. You guys have just interacted with the tables. I want to tell you a little bit more about the document and our expectations of metadata editing. So it was actually a great question. It worked us right into the next part of the talk, so thank you. So one thing, if you can imagine a whole bunch of people get added to a working group, we're all sitting around the table, we all just learned, we waited for 8-9 months for the feds and the international teams to approve the standard. We all sit down, read the standard, and then you kind of say, what now? We even work with state archives. We've got state, local government, federal, all the people we've been talking about. And we all sat down and said, what do we actually want to see? So it comes back to that effort we went before. What are you expecting out of metadata? What's in the standard? And then what in North Carolina about that standard do we want to communicate and help you guys with so that you can communicate that same information? Writing a good title is one of them. It's a free text field, but I really want you guys to take these best practice pieces of these tables to heart. We spent a lot of time with it. Something really important in our titles, because it may be the only thing somebody reads about your metadata. That title may be the only thing that shows up in the featured data set version of metadata that is the first thing the way our catalog sees it. And so we request that you remove acronyms. You can refer to them, but say the whole name all the way out. Be descriptive, be unique, make sure that title is really good. The who, what, when, where, why, all of that. Date formats. Holy moly, this is one of the things, if you ever use the old metadata parser from USGS, or if you still use it, your date format would fail on you regularly because it was free text and you can just type in whatever numbers you want and they didn't really mean anything. What we've wanted to do here in North Carolina is standardize the date entry, and we prefer to have the hyphens in there so that they're easier for folks to read so they know which part of it is a year. Some people like to put years first. Some people like to put, months, days first. So it is a bit international with the month and then the date. And if the date's not known or if the month isn't known, that's fine. This date isn't a particular kind of database date. Anyway, so, yes. So the question is, what if there's an enacted date or an implemented date? Great question. So what you're going to do is there's dates everywhere in the standard. So what you want to do is, if you're wondering about which one belongs where, you can always use your XPaths to kind of find your way through. Is it about the communication of the data? Is it about the publication of the data? Is it about when it was created? Is it about when it was updated? All of those are kind of locatable and stuck in there. So you can look at what's required and what is optional date-wise in the profile. We have options, I think, for every one of those. And even when we get into the geospatial services part, it gets a little tricky because the data is different than the publication of that service. So that's the long answer to the dates are everywhere, and anything you need to attribute a date to, there is an option within the standard to add a date to it. That sound good?
Yeah, and hopefully your editor, whatever editor you're using, will just present you that field that
Correct.
You can do that. So,
in Art Catalog,
it might not. It probably doesn't use the word enacted, but when you say enacted, do you mean policy-wise?
Like in law, session law that has been enacted versus when that law is implemented.
Okay, yes. It won't use enacted, and I don't have the standard with me right now, which I should have brought, but there's quite a selection of options, and I can get back to you on that.
Yep. You'll write that down for me, Linda? I'll get back to that. Responsible party. So we spent a lot of time on how to define who was responsible for the data, who's responsible for the metadata. The nice thing is that there were a handful of role codes, so made sure to put those in there. Again, our best practice for responsible party organization name is the name of the agency that serves as a legal custodian of the data. Again, we worked a lot with State Archives on this to make sure that, well, it was nice because they already have rules about all these things, so we can use a lot of their definitions, honestly. So between the ISO and the State Archives, custodian or point of contact is required. You guys already talked about how that's important to you. But that doesn't mean that's the only contact information available. One of my favorite things about this new standard is it's very modular. It's actually UML based. We're not trying to make everybody learn UML or XML necessarily to do their metadata editing. But because of the modular nature, you actually, very similar to the feature catalog, and have a contact catalog. And actually our catalog does support that, and as does another one of the open source metadata things. So basically you have an entire contact list, and wherever you need to put that contact with reference to any part of your metadata, you can just stick their contact information in without having to retype somebody's contact information in 100 times. That gets so old. So now the cool thing about this profile is being able to pick and choose things and just refer back to them. You just have to constantly refer back without having to hand manipulate it all the way through. Theme keywords, they are required. There is a type code for them. You must have one, you may have many. Use constraints. This was put in by our working group. It is not ISO required. So as you can imagine, a lot of the concern from local government, state government, about the applicable use of the information that you are publishing. We wanted to make sure that we were addressing those use constraints. We want to make sure people are paying the correct attention to things and putting the right information about the use of their data in this constraint field. We're adding to the profile a really excellent use constraint that was approved by lawyers coming out of DWQ. So we really like that one as a best practice. And another one of our examples up here is in all the hotbed of the GIS versus surveyors. I'm not going to get all into that, but we really do feel, that this use constraint field could help us in that distinguishing feature about what the data set can and cannot be used for. So the example you'll see on this slide here is that this data were not surveyed and should not be used for legal purposes. And we feel that as we move forward with that struggle between the surveyors and the GIS folks, that metadata could really be where the rubber hits the road in the defining of appropriate use for data sets. ISO topic categories. This is a part of the exercise we had, and there's a bunch to choose from. They're really cool. Pick one, you have to. Pick many if you want. These are also really nice search terms. Since they're universal, they're the code list, it's nice to be able to go to national clearinghouses, state clearinghouses, your own clearinghouse, and be able to find things. Spatial reference information, got to know where you are, where you came from, what it is that you're presenting in the world. Metadata scope, we talked about this. Really make sure if you're publishing a service that you call it a service, otherwise not required. Then there's types of services. Put that out there. So, Linda's moving around. Make sure I know. Okay. I'm going to grab water real quick.
You want water?
No, I got it. So do any of you guys have standards within your agencies for required metadata? Do you have to do it? Any of you have to do it? Sort of? You feel like that looks like an arranged marriage, right? Yeah. But is there anybody enforcing it, or is it just strongly recommended? Yeah. can get back to Justin's. Linda has an answer.
Actually, I was following up on Justin's question. Every date has a date type associated with it, and it's a very rich. It's the creation date, publication date. It's even the adopted date, the date enforced. It's a revision date. It's the next. There's just an extensive list. So all of those dates. Is it the data capture date versus the data publication date? So I think when you see that code list, you'll see the richness that you can do with your dates.
And then from there, if there's not guidance, then it's how you choose to represent your information and with that date. And if you are looking for more clarification from the state profile and you feel that it's not descriptive enough or helpful enough, to contact us. This profile is a living document. We want to make it useful and helpful and put stuff in those best practices to actually help you with it and not and to clear up any of those questions.
I think that's why, why God, and that's the problem, like where I work, our example is much different than
Sure. In the back, yeah.
I'll look for a consultant who has clients that require on data delivery, I don't know if they very license. And then we also have, I have a couple clients that we, that's okay, because if you know that we rely on that data, they can actually take that out.
Oh, wow.
So the assumption is that hopefully they're going to do it down the road, but they don't see the value in paying someone for it. And rely on me to see what, so that training is not like that.
Yeah. That's summarize that. Okay, so so that we get it into the microphone. Some of the feedback was from the private sector wise, they actually put line items in contracts to make sure they write metadata for the products they're providing, and their folks are scratching the metadata line item and not getting it delivered with their products. I know, like, that hurts your heart, right? Those of us who are crazy in love with metadata are very sad. But it's not unheard of. And it's also an equal fight when you ask people to put that line item back in as well. Yes. So you've got a GIS policy that says you must have metadata. Does it say to any standard or just that you got to put something in there? Yeah? Okay, great.
But my boss said, hey, just start it on metadata. Okay. Then I learned how to develop metadata, and then I was really Googling and stuff. And then I kind of set it aside and didn't really simplify it. And it's something that you really want to do, or take another. This is really helpful, so that now I have a standard to work on and do directly for it. I can work with. Most of what I do for publishing stuff is
Yeah.
and that so far has satisfied
And what we find too is that the more information you put in there, the quicker you can respond to questions about it, but also questions tend to go down because people can search it themselves. And so when people are talking about, well, it's a waste of my time to fill out that information, how much time are you spending answering questions that would have been filled out by people who would have read it? It's very easy to even do a PDF export and say, here's the information, even if it exists, even if they didn't go looking for it, if you already had it documented in there, it's so quick to get those questions answered. Oh, they're going to ask, but then you're not having to you're not going to have to double check. You're going to say, oh, I already know that, and be able to scooch it out to them pretty quick. In the interest of time, I'm going to go on because we'll all get hungry eventually. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
Dr. Jim's talk today gave a very alarming presentation. I walked in midway on Saturday morning. You look at your schedule, again, it's tough.
That's right. That's right. So actually, it's a really good idea to work with Shannon. She's at the UNC School of Government. So just for she's great. Actually, she teaches the government certified government CIO classes here in the state of North Carolina too. If you ever have the opportunity to sign up for that, it's a great year-long program. But I think that's a really good point, is how to enact this use constraint so that it forces people to at least click. But how many of us have read those? But it's also on us, the documentors, to get it in there. And we'll be definitely, I think it's a good idea to work with School of Government. Historically, we've worked with a couple of different folks, certainly need lawyers involved, depending on your level of delivery and responsibility. And of course, you're guiding, if you may get a new mayor and want something else, you may get a new group that wants something else. So to keep those guys on short leash to make sure that you keep that up to date for sure. You want to scoot these profiles? Just a couple spots.
Okay, well, let's say a little bit. We had some, in our metadata committee, we broke into some subgroups because we realized that some of the metadata content may be specific to certain themes, and we could put at least some placeholders, some general content into a template that could be suitable for, say, parcels or street center lines, municipal boundaries, orthoimagery, streams, address point data. You can start with a template that just has your organizational information embedded in it, export that, and then have that so you can import and get a head start with that. But there are some themes where you can enter some data ahead of time into the template, export that, and then have that ready to import into parcel data. For example, some of the custom content for parcels would be to put in some characters to find and replace for county name or contact information. A sample abstract can be very similar from county to county. You could certainly customize that, but it'll give you a head start. Or the use constraints we just talked about, and we'll follow up with that session by Shannon Tufts. That sounds like that'd be very informative. But there's certainly some use constraints you could start with in a template for parcels. Keywords. Keywords are the way that we search and discover data. Certainly in NC1 map, the word searches, they're looking at the keywords. So there's some like land records, landowner, assessed value, and so forth that would be specific to parcels and could be in that template to give you a head start. There's a question on formatting keywords and how many variations to put in. We tend to try to err at putting in more words that people might be thinking of to look up your data. You think about your consumers. I think it's somewhat tolerant in how it searches, but I think being specific, as specific as you can, in anticipating what people are going to think of and looking for your data about dry cleaners. Good question. But very important for discovering data. On our NC1 Map website, we do have resources, and including some software-specific templates in different formats. Esri, you open our catalog by itself, and you can import a template and get started that way for a feature class. Or Cat MD Edit, QGIS, we're going to try to build some of those templates for those as well. And so far, we've got county parcel data and a state agency generic template. We're going to work on some of those others. So we'll move on to the next section.
So we've gone over a little bit, but what do you think? Does this make metadata more digestible, more useful for you? Will this facilitate a shift or get you off the ground and running? We've already gotten a little bit of feedback. Are the best practices helpful? I'm just going to show you the next slide. We also want to know what does not work for you, because this is to make it easier and more accessible for the editors and for those who are consuming it. So, and then what are you going to do about this? So let's just kind of put it out there a little bit. What's good about what you've seen today? What's not so good about what you've seen today? These are living documents, like I'm saying. We want to fix things as we can. And then what do you think you're going to be doing next with it? Yeah, Faith. So I work with Faith at DOT, and for sure we've got really large data sets, and for people to scroll through all 100 county names to get to everything is a real pain in the butt. And when you have such large data sets, people don't want to download that just to get to the information about it as well. I think some of the places where those kinds of issues have been tried to be solved in the past are to come up with metadata portals so people can kind of search through, get the information they want. You can search through the metadata without to at least find what you're looking for. As far as better communication.
Can you clarify? We couldn't hear the question.
Okay, I'm sorry, Linda.
What the answer is.
So here's our problem statement, Linda, is that we've got huge data sets, so it's a pain to download it to get to the metadata. And then when you get to the metadata, our feature catalog is highly complex. And so you've got people scrolling and scrolling and scrolling through the feature catalog. And so they've asked for a more digestible version of the information that's easily accessible, quickly readable and searchable, that the metadata itself as attached to the geospatial files is almost overwhelming just due to the nature of our data sets. So it's a good question. How can we make recommendations to make metadata actually consumable by our users to be helpful, especially if they're highly complex? I see Jeff diligently writing. So I think it's something to take back to the work group and see. I know at DOT ourselves, we're looking at having a handbook so that we can make recommendations for things like thumbnails, how to walk through your art catalog. We're a heavy Esri shop, so they get you all, step by step all the way through. But that really doesn't talk about the consumable side of it. And I don't think we've talked a lot about the consumable side at all. We also have not spoken a lot about validation. So. Yeah, I think it's important to communicate our geospatial data without making somebody have to see the map. Yeah.
I really like the example about the good type of stuff. That understand, I think, is really helpful because I've done it in situations in the past where it's really hard for a lot of people to know all of that. With navigated people, either they use some kind of navigated system, or or they do something. I even get the system of what. And if I could just do one thing or the other, get everybody to get something.
Absolutely.
So I like the fact that the example of the title.
It's long, but it's so nice when you get into if you get into your geospatial, however you get to your data, even in the open source stuff, to see a big fat title like that actually tells you everything is nice. Correct. Yep, that was good.
So if I could just repeat the comment, in some situations it's all or nothing. You get a complete metadata record or you get nothing. The title, a very complete title, is better than nothing for sure. That's a good point. You can put a lot into that. Was there any? Yeah.
Dave? So what Dave was talking about is on the consumable side, in particular for services. Can I limit it to that for now? I can't help you on the paper printed. We'll get there one day. But on the services side, what we wanted to address in the standard address, which is a different metadata standard, actually required fields for the service itself. And then the data behind it itself will have its own metadata. And one of the problems right now with particularly AGOL is that it's not really consuming the metadata correctly. The ISO standard isn't really addressed correctly to be able to show you the service metadata versus the data metadata that's going into it. And so I think work group wise, we wanted to make sure to account for both services and data themselves so that we had a standard to meet. I think the next step is to then show somebody how to implement that, because if the data's not on the metadata is not on the data side, it's not going to get sucked in automatically to your map service necessarily, but then people aren't putting the publication information of that map service on top of that data publication date. So we've handled it in that there's a standard to meet. The implementation of it is where we're weak right now. So that is wonderful because it gets us into our next slide, Dave. Thank you. I know, Justin, you had another question, but do you mind if I'm... Yeah. So metadata committee, we're rolling out training, we're updating documentation, we're looking at editors all over the place, EPA metadata editor, straight up XML. We're looking at all the tools, the CAT MD edit, QGIS, anything you can use to edit metadata, we're looking at it, updating documentation. We take these training sessions and we fix the profile, make it more useful, put more feedback in there. And I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Tim to talk about some of the stuff for this summer.
Okay, great. Basically, NCDOT has provided funding to provide free metadata training throughout the state for the next year, year and a half. Craig and I are going to host it. We're going to host it at NCCU campus. We've got some information up here, and we'll pass this out before you leave. We've provided a survey, so if you want to talk about or discuss or put entries here as to how you want the training, where you want the training, when you want the training. We've provided a couple of training to some closed groups already, but we're looking to host online training. We've got we have a YouTube page for our department that we've posted some, just basic metadata. So we'll talk about how to, import the different templates. If you want something online for you or your technicians to send our way, if you want a face-to-face training, a 4-hour half-day face-to-face training, we'll do so at the NCCU campus. If we have a hosting place over in Charlotte or Asheville or over towards ECU, we're more than welcome to kind of take our resources over there. But here we're at your disposal. We're at basically GIS community's disposal for metadata training for this new standard, and then basically how do you make it applicable. These are nice words that we talk about here, but how do we implement it within the different metadata editors? And particularly, a lot of the stuff we've done this far has been with Esri, obviously, but we'll talk about how to do this through DOT. So that's about it from Aaron. Yep, and then we've got future training here. So Jeff is just going to pass out the link. So we're going to provide future training, and we've allocated resources, Craig, me, and we might have an undergraduate student that help us out during the summer. So we're just looking for input on how, where, in what form this training is going to take place.
Any more questions for us? I know it's almost food time, so yes. It is available online right now from NC One Map. And if you go to the Discover Get Data part of NC One Map, there's a metadata link, and that document actually is not right. Yeah, it's right there. Is the first one in this gray section, the current version of the state and local government metadata profile. So it's right on NC One Map, right on the metadata piece. So what you'll see here are some of our how-to guides are already out there. Feel free to peruse those. If you find errors, let me know. And some of our templates are already out there as well. So you can download the template, import it into your system, and go from there. Yes, Linda. Correct.
Sir.
Yes.
Over here. I just want to add something regarding NC One Map. So this is one Dr. Maroney referenced training videos, tutorials that we are creating and hosting. And this is actually one of the first videos that we made was navigating NC One Map website where to find information specific to metadata creation. So this is the first. The second one that I'm finalizing now is working through the standard itself.
Perfect.
So the information is out there, that you can share with, those in your group, who need it.
Yep, and we'll be adding the link to the YouTube for all of that as well to this site. So this is the site to go to get the most up to date as we get the feedback and we update things. This is where we'll be posting it, and I think we could probably even, as you fill out that questionnaire that we just handed out, it will be marketing those training opportunities as well. Yes.
Does anybody have an editor that they can recommend? Because I'm thinking out of ignorance, but if metadata is so important, why does Esri's editor suck so bad? I spent a week trying to create a metadata file, and then find out later from our GIS person that they just found out that there was some bug in version 10.1.1.2.3.5. I'm trying to get this up into ATOL, and it's the most frustrating part of the whole process is having to deal with the bugs in the editor, getting it pushed up into ATOL, and then going to ATOL, and it doesn't look like what I was working on before. by hand, kind of like unstopping the cow, but this is what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
What I can expect.
So if you talk to the feds, they're big about basically what you just said. Get yourself an XML editor, learn the XPaths, and hand edit that XML and import it into your geospatial file. They almost have it as an external editing mechanism. There's a really good EPA class on doing that if you want to take it. Me personally, I loved the way Cat MD Edit used it. That metadata editor that is open source. It has validation built in that the Esri tool doesn't. The how-to guide that's on here, I actually followed. Doug Newcomb wrote it. I followed it to do a live demo and how to use it, and it was easy to follow, and I liked it better. And similarly there, you can export it and then import it back in. We do want people to be able to edit in place. So we are conscientious of versions of the Esri software where, like I said, I'm an Esri shop. To install that open source was on my personal computer to see how to do it. But the idea is that we can help facilitate people to edit in place, because who has the time to switch back and forth? But after you've been banging your head on the wall for a while and bugs come through, you may choose to switch back and forth. And Linda's got some tool comments too. There's a FGDC thing with tools.
Can I actually go to the registry? FGDC is maintaining a registry of available ISO editors. It's, being populated slowly, so it's not what I want. And we're encouraging both the software developers to register their information, but also users to go in and register their experience here. And so you'll see the CAT-MD edit that Sarah just referenced. We have not, ArcGIS has not responded to the request yet, but we have the Esri portal service. QSphere is associated with the QGIS, and GeoNetwork is also a very popular one. But I do want to tell you, for those of you, since most of us do work in the ESRI environment, has anybody used the EPA add-on previously? It's called the EME. That was a godsend. Everybody loved it. And I've just heard from EPA earlier this week that they have now updated it to 19115. They're still beta testing it, but it should be available very soon. We're going to have them register their information here. Okay. Then you know more than I do. But anyhow, that tool is about to come out as an Esri version, so that's good. But keep your eye on this site, and if you have comments or you know of editors, please let us know.
Anything else before lunch? We've got a minute before lunch. All right. Thank you guys so much for coming and making it through the metadata session. We've got contact information up here. Fill out that survey. Tell your friends to fill out that survey. Tell us what kind of training you guys need. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody on the panel as well.